Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Coach Source Connect. This webinar is about group coaching, what's working, what's new, and what's what. My name is Jeff Nally, and I'm going to be your host and your presenter for this webinar. Really appreciate you joining. I think we have everyone muted as you join automatically, so we will have an opportunity for interaction. So please make sure that you have you're watching the chat function of tonight's webinar tool. I'll post some questions there. I'll verbally share what the questions are, and then I'll ask for answers to come in the chat just so we can see real time what that looks like. And then we will also have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. We should finish at the next top of the hour, and we really appreciate everyone being here. So my name is Jeff Nally. I am an engagement manager at Coach Source, where I help manage some accounts for our clients. I'm also the group coaching product specialist. So when any Coach Source client has a request or is curious about group coaching or needs group coaching design, then I help them do that along with their engagement manager and anyone else at Coach Source that we need to connect with. Then I work with you, our coaches, when it's time to reach out and say, we had this particular client, here's the type of group coaching they're interested in. We've drafted some designs just to get the conversation of scope and scale going. And then we'll reach out to you to be doing some group coaching for us. So tonight, we hope that you get an opportunity to see more, not only about what I'm experiencing and what Coach Source sees as we talk with our clients about group coaching, but also we want to hear from you. Group coaching is not new. But there's a lot of things that tend to work well in group coaching and some things that don't. There are some things that are new that I'm seeing and that we're experiencing in group coaching, and then we want to hear from you and find out what's what. So thanks for being here, and let's get started. So I'm going to move over and share the PowerPoint today so we can get started. So my contact information is there in case you want to reach out to me by email after the program, jeff.nally, Nally, at coachsource.com. And this will be that's the email for all of my Coach Source work, whether it's engagement manager work or group coaching. So please feel free to share your thoughts and ideas after the program. There are lots of people who have great ideas and great insights after this is completed. And we want to make sure that you get your questions answered. And if you have something else to contribute, that you have an opportunity to do that. So thank you for doing that. Okay, so here's the overview of what we're going to be sharing and discussing tonight. It's nighttime where I am, by the way. I'm in Venice, Florida, in the US. And thanks to all of you for joining from around the world. By the way, if you notice some of the Coach Source Connect webinars change a time, we may do them in different time zones so that sometimes people in Europe and other parts of the globe can participate, and other times we'll do them at a time when people in Asia and other parts of the world can participate. So thank you all for being here for this webinar. I'm going to share just a little bit of context and guidance for the webinar, and then what is group coaching? Talk about a definition and what we use at Coach Source to get the conversation started. We'll talk about what's working, what's new, what's what, and then we'll have open dialogue and more Q&A toward the end. So the context for the webinar is that while I'm going to be sharing some things I've seen and heard from you, our coaches who are doing group coaching, and our clients who are exploring it or just starting to get familiar with group coaching, those are some things I'm going to be sharing. So that's my lens and my perspective. I also created and led group coaching when I was an internal coach practice leader at Humana, the health insurance and wellness company. I was also a client of Coach Source and partnered with Coach Source to bring you, external coaches, into Humana to coach at the time while I was doing internal coaching. So I've led group coaching for our top 120 women in the company. We had some finance group coaching. We had some group coaching for acquisitions and senior executives of companies that we acquired. So my lens comes from the corporate internal space, and then also what I'm experiencing at Coach Source as we move forward. The guidance for the webinar is feel free to jot down questions or post them in the chat. Patty Ainsworth My angel and right-hand person who manages everything about me, which is great because I need it, is online, and she's kind of watching things in the background just to make sure everything's running smoothly. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them, and she can help monitor those as well. Um, Also, please be ready to share your perspective and your experience with group coaching. We'll ask for that in some questions in the chat section, and then we'll also do that in the Q&A. All right, so let's move forward with what is group coaching. So about a year ago, a little over a year ago, Coach Source experienced a lot of questions from clients and inquiries about group coaching. And so we needed to come up with a definition that could at least start the conversation, because every one of our clients seemed to have a different idea of what group coaching was and how it might be similar or different from one-on-one traditional executive leadership coaching. And so we moved toward the definition of Ginger Cockrum of that you see on the screen. And she wrote books on group coaching and had a blueprint guide for people to start coaching in a group space, in a group setting, and had some really interesting perspectives on that. Many of you may have known her. The definition goes like this: group coaching is a facilitated group process that's led by a professional coach and is formed with the intention of maximizing the combined energy, experience, and wisdom of individuals who choose to join the group in order to achieve organizational objectives and/or individual goals. So that probably doesn't cover everything you've experienced about group coaching. I know it's not exactly how I designed or led group coaching inside Humana, but it is a really good conversation point to start with. It allows us to bring in the notion that you can be a great coach, but to be a group coach, you also need to be a good facilitator. You have to know group processes. You have to understand group dynamics. You have to be able to go with the flow of what happens in a group and not just know the competencies and skills around the coaching profession. It's led by a professional coach. At Coach Source, we believe that lots of people do group coaching and they're probably good at it, but our clients want a professional coach who has experience, prior experience, leading group coaching in organizations for their clients in group settings so that they have some expertise in that, and everything about who they are as a professional coach comes first, and the group coaching skill or approach really is like stacked on top of that. It's in addition to what they already know and expect from a professional coach. And then we get to the thing that coaches and clients love the most about group coaching, it seems, and that is we're capturing the wisdom of the group. We're really getting the energy, experience, expertise, skill, knowledge, diversity, perspective, just name it, of everyone who's in the group to come and bring that to bear in the group coaching. It's not it's not solely on the coach's shoulders to make the group coaching successful. It's a shared accountability. And then there is something the group is trying to achieve. And that is either they have an individual goal, they have a collective goal, they have a corporate defined goal in some cases, but there is something specific they're trying to achieve, and they're using group coaching as the mode, as the format to make that happen. And I think that's what's really interesting about this definition is it starts that entire conversation going about what is group coaching and what about this definition seems to spark your ideas about why you think group coaching would be useful for your organization. So let's see, I'm going to post a question in the question spot. And let me make sure I'm doing this correctly. So what are the characteristics that make group coaching different from team coaching? So I know a lot of you have done team coaching before, and you're probably thinking, well, if this is group coaching, then what is team coaching? So I want to take a few moments just to have you have everyone type in your responses. You can use one words or a couple of words or a characteristic or a practice or a trait. But what's one thing that makes team coaching and group coaching different from each other for you? And while we wait for some of those responses to come in, I will let you know that as I continue to connect with a lot of Coach Source coaches, I really appreciate all the different definitions that they have, that all of you have about group coaching and what that looks like. Um, and I really appreciate the fact that everyone has a different perspective based on your own experience, and that sometimes those definitions are a little too constraining or a little too confining. And um, and I think that's really powerful. All right, so here are some things that are being shared. Um, Group coaching is probably not an intact team, someone says. Uh, it's not people who work together necessarily, so they may not be connected that way. Um, there's also usually a different group dynamic. We have some other folks sharing that the group dynamics can be very different. Um, One person puts, oh, please make sure there's always two facilitators. I've been hearing that there should be two facilitators. Please comment on this. I will say that it depends on the size of the group. We've been experiencing at Coach Source and in other spaces that a small group tends to be the best fit. Six seems to be the magic number for an hour, hour and a half group coaching session to ensure there's interaction and to ensure other voices are heard besides just one or two people. We get to 8 or 10 people or 12 or 15. It really requires probably two coaches to help facilitate because the group is doing several things at once, or the coach is trying to almost multitask, do several things in a row. So it's not a bad idea to have more facilitators, more coaches in those sessions. Greetings from Argentina. Thank you. Good to see you all again. Thanks for that comment. Um, and we have a couple of folks who aren't able to hear. If they're putting that in the answer box, if you'll disconnect and reconnect again, that would be great. It looks like other folks are able to hear, and I appreciate that. So I do want to let you know that we do have someone on our Coach Source team, Dan Feldman, Dr. Dan Feldman, who is my peer, and he's leading all of the team coaching for Coach Source. And what we're experiencing in that space is that it typically is for an intact team with a leader and people who report to him or her. That the team coaching can include everything along a spectrum, right? On the kind of one end of the spectrum, it's self-awareness, where there might be assessments and feedback, stakeholder input created for the team, and the manager and the coach's responsibility is primarily to get the team aware of themselves and to have them reflect on how does it help us operate better or differently. Then if you move all the way to the other end of the spectrum, it could be a whole culture change for the team. Two teams have come together. A team is not going to be doing the same product or service they used to do, and now they're going to be an intact team to do something different. They have a brand new manager. This culture shift among a team may take up to 2 years. And in some cases, it does require more than just self-awareness, but the coach needs to be able to take the entire team and all members of the team on a journey to shift their thinking, shift their behavior, shift their actions, and shift their culture. So think about the team coaching as a really broad spectrum, while group coaching probably has some more narrow characteristics. The interesting news is almost any topic could be brought to bear in a group coaching context and can be useful for group coaching. So we're having Dan Feldman do another Coach Source Connect later on in 2020 about team coaching. So when you get the email about that, please sign up for that so that you can discuss team coaching in a more in-depth manner, and he can share his expertise and what we're hearing from you as team coaches who are in Coach Source, who are doing team coaching, and what he's seeing from our clients when they're asking for team coaching or think they need team coaching. All right, so let's move on to what's working. What we're experiencing is that in group coaching, a model can be helpful, especially to clients, companies, leaders, coaching practice leaders, HR, OD professionals, when they contact us and say, we think we need group coaching, but we're not really sure. So we have on the right in the blue, you see we have a general intake process. There's a design process, and then the group coaching implementation. And what we're learning is that in the intake, it does start with a needs conversation. This is not different than any other consulting or coaching conversation that you might experience as you begin to work with a client who says, I might need some coaching. Or if CoachSource connects you with a client, we say, here's the presenting goals and the presenting leadership coaching issues and challenges. And then you really start a needs conversation. We really also have to understand the context and culture of the group, of the organization, of the people who are going to be involved. And then what we found is really interesting is that even HR and OD peers that we have are not focused on understanding the format as much as they are. We have a problem, we need a solution, and nothing else that we seem to consider would really fit like a strong perfect puzzle piece. It's not one-on-one coaching, it's not training, it's not other things. And so they talk to us about the problem they're experiencing, the end result, what success looks like, the solution they think they need, and then the mode of getting there sometimes is group coaching. So as we've done this over and over, we're experiencing that the whole consulting model and the co-creation model at the very beginning is really useful, and that's where clients really start. In the design space, excuse me, in the design space, it's about what the goals of the group coaching need to be or should be. Is it focused on development or is it focused on something else? What's the relationship between the people who might be in the group? And what has it been? Where is it right now? And what do they think they want it to be? We also help craft the logistics, the flow, the design, the frequency of the sessions, the size of the group, when there's one-on-one sessions and when there's group sessions, to really give people, our clients, a design perspective as well. And I'm sure you've done that as part of your work as well when you've done group coaching. And then when it's time to actually implement, we're finding that, as usual, coaches who are really good at this integrate their facilitation skills, their coaching skills, and the dynamics of interpersonal dynamics, intrapersonal dynamics, all the things that happen when they're in a group setting. There are lots of tools and resources and processes. It can be different for every group. Sometimes there's a lot of content that needs to be either created or the coach already has at their fingertips that could be really useful for this group. And so we'll ask the coach to include that. Other times resources are offered up throughout the group coaching as needs arise, just like you do in a one-on-one engagement. And in many cases, it's about stakeholder connections. Who is connected to this group that's going to be coached that needs to have a better or different relationship? How are these individuals? And how is the group, if they have a common denominator of some kind, how are they interacting with their peers, their teams, other departments, and the rest of the organization? So what's working is, and what we found that works is intake conversations and the consultative co-creation approach matter. Design is important with respect to goals and what does the flow or the potential framework look like? And then what are you going to have to bring to bear as the coach to be a really great group coach and to make sure the client gets everything that they need? All right, so let's move on to another aspect of what's what, and that is a group coaching design example. So on the screen right now, you see one design example where this has elements for a 6-month group coaching program for 6 participants, where there'll be 6 monthly 1-hour group sessions, and then the coach is going to do 3 virtual one-on-one coaching calls. This is just an example of some of the designs we do. What I've learned over the past 18 months is every group coaching design is individualized to that group, to that company, to that need. We really don't have any that are like very similar, but this just gives you an idea of where that there will be group coaching sessions and how many there are and whether they're virtual or in person. That really matters. And then there may or may not be one-on-one interactions between the coach and individuals in the group. and where those fall and why they're there and what's supposed to be accomplished by those really matter as well. And that's an important thing to note, because we don't always have that assumption that that's going to occur. But in many cases, we found that this notion of having a one-on-one coaching conversation with the coach is really useful. So I'm going to post another question in the group design, and this will be one for people to ponder on. So what is the maximum number of individuals you think, well, in a group that you've coached? Just tell me the maximum number of individuals you've coached, type in numbers, and we'll see what comes up here. This will be really interesting because this is always a great point of conversation. How many and why, right? So while the responses are coming in, I'll share with you that when I have one of the group coaching programs I led at Humana was, as I said, was for the 120 top women leaders in the company, and it was about succession and growth and development and accelerating their aspirations to move up and around the organization. And because it was 120 women, obviously we couldn't coach them all at the same time. So we created cycles of coaching, a 4 or 5 month cycle that included about 20 to 40 women in a cycle. And then we had 3 coaches leading groups of 12 to 15 people. And the coaches were just coaching that group of 12 to 15, but they were simultaneous. Another coach was coaching another group of 12 or so to 15, and then a third coach was coaching, so that they would kind of start and end about the same time, even though they had separate coaches. That worked really well, but one of the things we learned right away was that's an awful lot of people to have in a group to coach. And instead of a 1 hour call, those were full day on site group coaching experiences. We flew everyone into one location to be with their coach. So the coach could take the whole day to group coach, but it's still a large number of people. You can imagine the number of challenges there might have been with that. All right, so I'm looking for responses. Let's see where they are. Okay, they're scrolling up because there's lots of responses that came in after our other question. So I want to make sure I get those too. Great comments about the goal being more defined. Thank you for that. And then there's lots of comments here about more team coaching and group coaching differences based on how many people there are. So 8 is a max, 14 is a max, 6 is a max, 10 is a max. About 11 is the most I've done, someone says. 4, I think. Thanks for that. 11, 8, 6, um, 10. So I could go deeper with fewer people, someone says, which is great. 18, 12, 12, 26 in 2 locations. Yeah, that seems to work. Um, I did coach a group of leaders from a company that Humana had acquired, and we did have about 10 to 12 people in those group coaching sessions at a time. We were able to take an hour and a half for each of those, so we had more time to coach, which was great and really, really helped. Um, but it we on occasion I would have a peer coach, another internal coach at Humana, coach with me and facilitate. And so having 2 people for 10 or 12 when you have an hour and a half and everyone is virtual seemed to work well for us too. So thanks for that. The numbers are all over the board, but frankly, they're a little lower than I thought. In some cases, you can imagine what our clients are asking for. Some of them think that you could get 20 or 40 people in one group and have a coach coach them. And we have to tell them that really group coaching works in much more intimate ways with smaller groups. And so we need more groups and either more coaches or the coach is going to meet with the groups at different times. And then they finally get it. But sometimes it's very hard for our clients to figure out that we're not really bringing them in to do downloading knowledge training, or we're not doing a presentation where the coach speaks for an hour and shares her wisdom and then everybody leaves. This is a very different format and a lot of different interaction than most clients of ours really kind of think about or come with, or who are ready to really move forward in group coaching. They have a different view of what that looks like. A few other comments that are coming in now. Over 12, if I have a co-facilitator and we can do small group breakouts, it's a great thing to do. One person wrote 50. That'd be awesome. Love to see that model. 10 to 12, one person says, but 6 to 8 is like the sweet spot. So if I'm forced to it or there's no way to have that happen, then 6 to 8 seems ideal. All right, great. Thanks so much for your comments on that and for answering that question in the chat. All right, so let's move on with uh, beyond what's what in this space. Let's move to what's actually working. So on this slide, I've captured some of the things that seem to work well in group coaching sessions. So what we hear from our participants in group coaching and the coaches who coach them and the companies and organizations that hire us is that it gives people a chance in the group to report on their recent progress, their setbacks, their feedback, what worked well, what didn't, and then how to move forward. I know we do this in one-on-one coaching, but in group coaching, it seems like the power of numbers and the sharing of wisdom and the being able to share with other people what didn't go well, what did go well, where you are now, and then coaching around what's next. Group coaching is really ripe for that. Um, there is at the front end a challenge, a goal, or a scenario that maybe the group wants to explore. So that tends to happen either at the beginning of the engagement or sometimes that's used to launch and start a session. There could be role playing, scenario playing. It's a great opportunity to do that. It's a great space for some people to do what they call experiment on ideas or thoughts or actions with the group and play them out and get feedback. It's a great place to learn new tools and tactics and resources. We don't want to dampen the power and benefit of some moments of training, some moments of knowledge sharing, some moments of skill development, if that's useful to the group and how it helps them achieve their goal. So I think that's one of the things that if you're a group coach who's a purist, and says, I don't do any consulting, I don't bring any tools, I really focus on coaching, that's great. There are others who have said, oh, I've done group coaching, I got 6 people together and then I trained them on this one tool. That may be more like group training instead of group coaching, but what we hear from our clients and what we see is bringing in the right tools, doing a moment of training, being able to take your hat as a coach and turn it to facilitator, or switch it out to a trainer for the moment, or switch it out to sharing a specific skill or experience is really helpful, and groups really appreciate that. There's a lot of group coaching where the group coaching is actually used to help craft a development plan for people in the group. They create their own development plan and they talk about from the group coaching experience how they want to move forward and what's next now that group coaching is complete. And then we get the beauty of the continuity and the building on each session as each person in the group shifts, changes, grows, shares, and they get closer. All right, so what would happen in the one-on-one calls? Well, in most cases, especially in that simple design I showed you where there's a one-on-one coaching call at the end and one in the middle and one at the end, the first call is usually to build rapport between the coach and the individual. A 30-minute, 45-minute call can go a long way to sharing what and confirming what the expectations of the group coaching happen to be, to get the individual's perspective of why they think they were either nominated for group coaching or assigned to group coaching, or even if they raised their hand and volunteered to participate, what is it they're expecting? And then the second call, which comes usually at the midpoint, is a great opportunity for the coach to share what she's observing and how this person interacts with the group when the group meets. It's a wonderful opportunity for the coach to kind of give reflections and to say, if I were a mirror and you were able to see, if there were a mirror in group coaching and you were able to see what I see about how you interact in the group and what seems to be working for you and where you tend to shine and where you tend to withdraw, that's the kind of learning that the second one-on-one session can really bring. It's also an opportunity for the individual to share with the coach what may be holding him back, what he might want to do new and different, where he feels like he's having obstacles in his behavior change or practicing actions or gathering feedback between sessions. And then the final call is a useful way to close the group coaching. All of all of us who have been coached, we want to know that it ends. And we want to create kind of closure and be able to wrap it up and summarize and hardwire all those learnings in our brains and confirm what we know. So when somebody asks us, hey, what'd you get out of this group coaching? I can really tell them because most people aren't concerned with, well, how many people were in the group and who was your coach? They just want to know, hey, what'd you get out of this thing? So the last call is a great opportunity for the coach to help that person craft that story. Where are you headed with this now that group coaching is complete? What's the next step in your development? Even though group coaching sessions are ending, what are the things you're going to practice on your own to really strengthen that new thought, that new behavior, or create a habit out of some of the actions that you've started before? So this is what is working and what our clients are telling us and what participants say helps or matters or that we should keep doing more of in group coaching. And so as coaches, I think it's useful for us to keep our finger on the pulse of that and to figure out what that looks like. All right, so what's new? Here are new learnings and what what we're experiencing at Coach Source. Many of you have probably been a part of these if you've done group coaching with us. Others of you probably know this because as you talk with your own clients and you do group coaching for them, this may be what's new-ish and what you've been experiencing. One, on the intake part of the conversation and process, we have found that HR professionals, OD professionals, executives, leaders in the organization, the people who contact us and say, we think we need something besides one-on-one coaching. What else do you have? And how might group coaching work? That they really aren't clear about a lot of things. They may not be clear about the problem that the organization is trying to solve. They may not be clear about what group coaching or team coaching might be. And so we spend a lot of time listening, and then doing some discovery and trying to help them clarify their own thinking. We also spend time helping them create the future state. Regardless of what mode of coaching or development or consulting or facilitation you might use, tell us what success looks like when this thing is over. And that gets our clients thinking about here's what the future looks like and here's what's different or better than it is today. The last thing on the intake is show and tell works. It really helps for us as Coach Source and as coaches to have a PowerPoint presentation, to show some models and to give examples. Because what we find is when we start to do that, then the client starts to say, ooh, it's a little more of this and it's a little less of that. Ooh, it doesn't look like that at all, but it does look like this for us. And then they start to kind of frame up their thinking. In the design space, what's new is show and tell and design. We really co-create the design with the client. I know that seems obvious, but in some cases it hasn't been. And when we as Coach Source think we're doing all the right design up front and kind of then showing it to the client, or the client thinks they know exactly what they want and they show us a model. When we get together on a Zoom call or in person and we start to co-create it, we always come up with something that's better, different, unique, and is going to really work for them and may not work for anybody else. So show, tell, design together. Also, the notion of training versus coaching. It's not really versus anymore. It's what degree of skill building, knowledge transfer, training might need to happen, and how much coaching needs to happen because you're trying to stretch people's thinking, you're trying to get them out of their comfort zones. That's been a really useful conversation to have with clients. And as coaches, it's a good one to have. And so it's not an either or, and these two concepts don't fight each other in group coaching. They can really come together in a really integrated way in group coaching. And then in the design space, the scope and scale. Sometimes it's we have 150 leaders and they all need to be more blank, or they're all going to be going through a certain type of change, and we want group coaching to help them make that change better and make that easier on them. So deciding and getting a really clear lens on the scope and scale, geography, number of people, um, what type of technology might be used, whether this is in person or virtual, all of that needs to be factored into the design. And then when the group coaching actually occurs, there's an awful lot of internal communication and context setting that needs to occur inside the organization. In most cases, for CoachSource, and you might find this to be true for your practice, you're really counting on the coach practice leader or the senior executive or the HR person or OD person to make all the internal communications. You give them some messages, you give them a framework, you tell them what to expect, but they have to run their own internal, here's what we're doing, here's how you sign up, or here's how you've been assigned to be in group coaching. And they really have a lot more management internally of communications and context setting than they assume. Now, some of you may actually take that on yourself, or as Coach Source, the company may ask us to take on some of that. It's a much broader scope for the program, and it means that we have to have a lot more access to the people who are going to be in the group coaching, and we have to do a lot more work. The group coaching scheduling and the flow and the session planning is really an important part for coaches and Coach Source to figure out. So we co-create that together when a client comes to us and we get that far along. Actually, how this is going to pan out, when the sessions are going to occur, if they're virtual, if they're in person, if they're a hybrid, that's really, really important. And then finally, creating the experience of group coaching, doing what you do best as a professional coach, as a person who's led group coaching before, as someone who wears that facilitator hat, the coach hat, and then puts the training hat or some other hat on once in a while and can flow with the group as they grow in group coaching. So that's what works. I'm also really, really curious about group coaching technologies. I have led group coaching strictly by phone, voice conference call over phone lines, not over IP, not over computers, not over Zoom, just dialing into a conference line. And for larger groups, it tends to work pretty well. I was surprised at how useful audio only can be in group coaching. And I think that's something that we should consider and also offer up to our clients, especially if internet technology or laptops or video cameras are not available everywhere the participants are. There's a lot of video conference, a lot of Zoom group coaching going on, and we see more requests for that. There's also a lot of hybrids where we connect in-person coaching with some other virtual type of coaching or electronic coaching. We still have in-person group coaching. Sometimes it's the first session and last session. Sometimes if the coach is local and the company has really desired an in-person coach, then we make that happen, and you could be a coach who's on site doing group coaching. So I'm not going to post this question in the chat, but I want you to go into the question, the question area, and I would like you to, where it says ask a question, I would like you to tell me what other technologies you're using or you've seen used to do group coaching. I'm really, really curious what other technologies are out there that I'm not seeing or I haven't mentioned in this short bullet list. So tell me, what are you seeing in group coaching in terms of technologies? And while some of those responses are starting to come in, I'll mention that I know mobile is the way to go, and we're all working and living off of our phones. And we can actually have Zoom and video conference that works so much better on mobile devices than they did just 14 or 18 years ago, 14 or 18 months ago. So that technology gets better. I don't know if any of you have done group coaching on a mobile platform before using just solely using that. We got some folks saying, I use WhatsApp, which is great for international and doesn't have any phone tolls or things like that. And using WhatsApp for interim communications. Thanks. So communicating between the sessions. On-site video call for a remote group is another one. Members being on the same screen. I'm sorry. Hold on, let me show you that. That's a very long one. On-site video call, where people call in for remote group members to be on the same screen in a healthcare group. Thank you for that. Someone says, I'm hearing about virtual reality. Wouldn't that be cool? I would love to have virtual reality become part of group coaching. One coach says, I had a client once that didn't want to miss a session. And so, let's see what else to say. Didn't want to miss the virtual session. So they did so by listening on a phone and then texting via his mobile phone. So they texted in, even though they couldn't do the video. Someone writes, I'm curious, is anyone using Slack for group coaching? We use Slack, or I don't know if you're familiar with Slack, but I have several mastermind groups or mentoring groups that are using Slack as a way to collaborate and communicate. Here's a different hybrid, one coach says, where one part of the group is in one room, while the other part of the group is in another room, so breaking them into subgroups. Connecting virtually via Zoom or WhatsApp. One coach says, I haven't used Slack, but I expect to. Using threaded discussions. That's a great way, especially if video or even audio is not possible. Another person writes in, another coach writes in, Slack is awesome for collaboration. That's great. And using Slack for group coaching. So it sounds like we need to have more time where we can talk about how to use Slack for group coaching. And thank you so much for sharing your perspective on different technologies that we can use as coaches in group coaching. All right, so I'm going to move on to what's what, and then we'll do the open Q&A. The last two slides here. I just want to give you some example about the what's what is, for me, in these two slides, is really showing you what the outcome is. What is the problem that a client has been trying to solve? And what did the group coaching look like? Because that's what's what for them. That's the what they are after. So in the first example, we at Coach Source can actually do a test drive for group coaching. We have some companies and clients who call and say, okay, I see what you do there and you've described it well, but I'd like to have our internal coaches, maybe our HR, OD people, or the maybe a couple of leaders of the people who are going to be in the group coaching to experience it first, so we really know what it's like. And then we can tell people, we've been through some group coaching, we know what you're getting, this is the right design, this is the right mode to achieve what we want. And so in the model I put there, this can be as short as 8 sessions. There's group coaching sessions, which you see in white, group coaching session 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then in the black, it says debrief session. So after we take the group through and they bring a real live example, a real live goal, a real live something they're trying to achieve in their workplace, in their relationship together. So it can't be just a fake one where we demonstrate. We really want them to bring a need, a common need, or an individual need that everybody in the group has. So we do a group coaching session, and then the next session is a debrief. We show them what we did there. We describe where the coaching was. We had them tell us what they experienced. What was facilitated, what was training, what was coaching. Where did they experience the shared wisdom of the group? And so we can do that for just a handful of sessions. And then that gives them a real feel for what this looks like and what it feels like and what the outcome is. Because even after 4 sessions, they can walk away with an action plan, some shifted thinking, and an ability to move forward in that goal or move closer to achieving what they wanted to achieve. Another one is real world action learning. So action learning is not new, but we have some clients who say, I want to use group coaching in conjunction with an action learning setting. And we had one client who wanted to create a new service. And so they brought several groups of mid-level directors together. They were all separate. They treated them kind of like an entrepreneur group. So each one was given an amount of cash they could use from the company, live cash. All the groups got the same business problem. Here's the problem we're trying to solve. We have no way of knowing how to solve this. It's been an albatross for our industry for a long time, and we'd like you as separate groups to come up with solutions. So in the 1 hour in session that you see in those bubbles, this is where the group coach observes the groups actually working on their entrepreneurial solution, where they've used that money to hire consultants or to pull in information. They're actually using action learning to craft the new service. So the coach is there as an observer and doesn't is not accountable for leading the group. There are other entrepreneur experts and consultants, and if you want to think of it as like Shark Tank, there's Shark Tank people to kind of help them craft their ideas so they can accelerate them. The 1 hour group session is where the group then a day, a two, or later, or a week later meets with the coach. And this is a true group session. The group works with the coach to figure out what did we do well, what didn't go well in the last in session, our action learning session, where we were trying to create this new service. The coach can offer her observations, and the group gets the wisdom of the group to kind of self-reflect and look back at what they did and then plan their next action learning session to be better or different or to do something new. So that's what's what with respect to action learning and how it connects with group coaching. The next two are reflection and culture shift from within. We have some clients for whom group coaching is just a safe space. It's a private, confidential space the company is giving a group of people to work with the coach to reflect, to think, and to decide what's next for themselves. We have one client where they had rolled out a diversity and inclusion initiative about 2 years ago, and they thought it was going well, but that wasn't the point. They had plenty of data, but they created a group coaching design where mid-level managers got together with a coach, and their sole purpose was to share. So, what have you done with the new diversity and inclusion approach, policy, processes? What's working? What's not? What's interesting here is no one in the group was required to report back to HR or the company. The coach didn't share anything with the organization. There was no write up, no, not even a summary of themes. It's just the private, safe forum for leaders to reflect amongst themselves and learn and grow. And the last one is a little more involved. This is where a client asked us to actually do some consulting and design work and create for them a new leadership competency that they had been exploring. The word they had been exploring, they weren't really sure about the way it was defined and described by other corporations or consulting firms. So this design included time, effort, and consulting by the coach with Coach Source and the client to create the competency. And then the group coaching was for mid-level leaders to explore how might we learn more about that competency? What part of that competency already exists among us? How can we grow it? Where might we apply it that we in ways or parts of our leadership we haven't done before? So that's just another what's what of group coaching. All right, that's plenty of me talking. Let's move to the Q&A now. And so I'm going, if you want to raise your hand um, or post a question, I will see if I can work the technology along with Patty behind me to help out and take a couple of folks off of mute and let you ask a question. All right, so if you want to raise your hand or post a question. Wait for you to open that and get an opportunity to do that. Okay, so I do have a written question from John Cooper. Thanks for writing in. Good to see you on the call. When do you involve the coach in the design process? Good question. In some cases, we draft a broad general design, kind of like the bubbles that I showed you, to get the client thinking about what that looks like and what they need. When we understand exactly the solution they're trying to look for, then we are likely to do what we do in a regular nomination process for a one-on-one engagement. We'll contact two or three coaches that we think have an expertise in this area or in the right geography or fit the criteria the client has. And then we say, here's the presenting issue, this group, they want to do group coaching. Here's what we've shared with them so far. Are you interested and available in participating in the design process? If it's a short design process, it might be a couple of phone calls. If it's a long one, where it's like we want to develop a competency from scratch, it's going to be a much more in-depth approach. And then we ask if you're interested and available, and then we involve coaches at that part of the process. Curious, Cheryl Anderson, thank you so much for your question in the question box. How are you pricing group coaching? That's an excellent question. So we find that it's a combination of several things. One is how much design work is required by you, the coach, or coach source to actually help the client craft what their needs are, what their solutions might be. Have they fully defined the problem? Is discovery going to be a very long process? That's one price and one factor in it. The other factors that drive price are how many people, how many sessions, how long are the sessions, are they in person or virtual, and how much content is the coach going to need to share? Is there a competency you're trying to drop into the organization, or does this coach have a communications design, workbook, plan, methodology that you also want to include in that? So that would add to the price and also make it fluctuate, if you will, based on how many people, scope and scale, number of sessions, et cetera. What we're learning is there's always a little bit of design work. It may not be as much as develop a competency from scratch, but for others it may be just a simple short-term design piece. All of those things go into to factor what the investment might be for the client for a group coaching experience. Similar questions on the design. Has anyone else used assessment tools to have a group understand their behavior in groups? So Noel Osborne, thanks for that question. So I'll give the general answer since we don't have time for a whole. It could take a great hour if we talked about what kind of assessments to use in group coaching. But yes, assessments can be included. Some clients and coaches have them as a pre-process before group coaching begins. For other clients, they say, we have this assessment. Here are the three key areas, elements where where our leaders just have a deficit. And so we want a group coaching around each one of those three areas. And so it gets, we kind of come in toward the end and see the output. But assessments can come in at any point. They can be fully integrated into group coaching. They can happen before, or they can be something that the coach actually brings as part of the design. And while I'm looking at another question, I'll ask Patty if she'll unmute someone who's raised their hand. That's great. Patty, will you raise Chrissy Barr's hand? I think hers is up. And we'll see if we can get the audio going.
Hey Jeff, it's Chrissy. How are you?
Hey, Chrissy, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Congratulations on your move to Florida, and thank you. Mine is not so much a question; it's just a compliment that this session has been terrific, and you really explained the difference between group and team coaching, and very, very informative. So thank you so much for taking the time to pull all this together and enlighten us.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. And thanks for being here. All right, Patty, if you've seen another hand raised for an audio question, that would be great. While we're waiting for that, I'm sorry, go ahead. Who's on the line? Okay, we'll wait for them to speak. Lori Severson, how are you? Good to see you on. I'll answer her question while we're waiting for the audio to start. How do you identify coaches for these projects? Good question. We are creating in the cloud a space for you to check whether you have a checkbox, whether you have actually done team coaching before or group coaching. We're actually creating a specialties area that includes group and team coaching, so you can drop down and check those boxes. Make sure in your coach profile, if you have done team coaching or group coaching, list that. We know that means that the individual you may be coaching will see that in your profile, but we can at least search that in the database and find out who's done group coaching or team coaching before. So don't hold, what is it, hide your candle under a bushel, right? Let your light shine and make sure in your profile it's there. Meanwhile, we're working to find better ways to have the database reflect what kind of group coaching or team coaching you've done in the past. Thanks. All right, who else is on audio ready for a question? All right, I'll answer another group, it's a written question while we're waiting. Um, Pam Fox Rollin is on. Hey, thanks for being here. She says, I often incorporate structured one-on-one peer coaching without her as the coach between the sessions. So peer coaching between the sessions. People love it. What has been Coach Source's experience with this and interest from clients? So Pam, I did the same thing when I designed the group coaching for Humana, and I was the internal coach leader. Between the day-long in-person group coaching sessions, there were actually virtual peer coaching sessions where the coach was not present, but someone in the group took accountability for bringing everyone together virtually by phone or video conference, and they would do peer coaching. So our experience is that if it's useful and it's a part of what the client wants to have achieved, that people in the group learn a few coaching conversations or coaching skills so that they can have good peer conversations with each other and ask useful, thoughtful, reflective questions. That sometimes is included. Take some time, teach them how to be peer coaches to one another, and then let them practice it. And then you can disappear if you like, coach, between the sessions and let the groups have their own peer coaching. Sometimes it's one-on-one, sometimes it might be the entire group. In some cases at Humana, we had the groups of 12 or 15 break into peer groups of 3 to 4, and that's the group that we get together by phone or technology of some kind between the sessions and do some peer coaching. All right, lots of questions on peer coaching. I hope that at least gave some overview and some options for you. And when will you send the slides? We will have the slides in a PDF that will be available to you, and I'll work with Patty to make sure that happens. This is also being recorded, so you can go into the cloud, and when you log in, the very last tab past your profile, past payments, is Connect. You click on that, it takes you to an exterior link, and that private link gives you access to all the recordings. There are several out there for the past 2 years, I think. So please feel free to go and check out the Coach Source Connect recordings. This is a resource for you as coaches to help us learn from each other. And so if you can't make the live webinar, you can certainly take your time and then go out and look at the recordings and listen to them and watch them and take advantage of those. We're at the top of the hour, and I know for some people it's either very early in the morning or very late at night, and I want to give them a chance to rest. For others, it's time to go back to work. So thank you again so much for joining and for participating. Thank you for all your questions and for some of you coming off mute to answer some live questions. I'm going to put my contact information on the last screen so that it shows while you're exiting. And I really look forward to working with you on group coaching engagements in the near future. Please update your profile and watch for our announcements and places for you to check some boxes on coaching specialties for group, team, and other types of coaching so we can have an easier way of finding you in the network, especially when group coaching comes. Thanks again, and everyone have a great week.